parts of the community. Rochdale was once something to behold. It was a place of note, a proud English town with a market, with a football team in the proper divisions, with famous people associated with it, and people proud to say that they were born here. And we now have a situation where nobody can be born here. And that's a pretty significant phrase, you know. Let me say it again. Nobody can be born in Rochdale unless in a taxi on the way to Oldham. When a town is a town that you can't be born in, and in this case, because they've taken the A&E also, you cannot die in. If you cannot be born and you cannot die in a town, to what extent is it any longer a town? And when you lose a market that was once the heart of the community, and now when I see one of my friends here with whom I'm working on this, when you factor in that we may lose the football team, Rochdale, without a football team, without a market, without an A&E, without a maternity unit, that is a very, very grievous set of blows. You might as well say that this then is a town with no heart, and yet the people are full of heart. The people want to be proud of Rochdale. They remember, and their parents remember, when Rochdale was a proud place. And I'm determined, therefore, that what will kick-start here on Thursday, in the event of our victory, will be a Rochdale revival. In 1844, the pioneers started what became the worldwide cooperative movement in this town, in Toad Lane. Again, you know, that's not a small thing. I've been in cooperative institutions, whether shops or otherwise, all over the world. I've been in a co-op in the favelas in Brazil. I've been in a co-op in the townships in South Africa. I've been in co-ops everywhere, all over the world, and it started here, right here. That's not a small thing. By definition, only Rochdale can say that. And therefore, I hope that on Thursday, we'll be pioneers again, and we will return the very first Workers' Party Member of Parliament in history. That would be a pioneer spirit that would be worthy of the original pioneers in 1844. I'll not be here for the bicentenary unless I'm extremely lucky, but I hope that my children will be able to celebrate in 2044 the bicentenary of one of the greatest innovations, revivals that ever occurred anywhere, and it took place here in Rochdale. I'm working, I said, with one of my friends in the room on trying to save the football team. I don't want to go in here to who's to blame for what. I don't want to ascribe responsibility for the parlous situation that the club now faces. But be sure, if something does not happen very quickly indeed, the football team will go into liquidation. And once you're in liquidation, there's no way back except at the very, very bottom of the many tiers of the National League. Imagine, I tweeted in 2018, long before I knew I'd be standing here in front of you, that I'll tell you the exact tweet. I've been all around the world, and I've never seen an FA Cup giant killing effort like that being put in by Rochdale this evening. It was against Tottenham Hotspur. They were very unlucky not to win the leg here, and of course the rest is not history. But that night I was sitting watching Rochdale in an FA Cup giant killing exploit against the mighty Tottenham Hotspur. And now we might be about to not just fall out of the league, but fall out of the National League, fall out of existence altogether. So we are talking with various people from the great days back in 2018 about what we can do to save the club. All I'm really able to say, because of commercial and other sensitivities, is that I'm here to ask Rochdale Council to do whatever is necessary to save the club from liquidation. And I promise, if they do, that we will put together the widest possible group of people, led by the men from the great days, to save the club and restore it to its former glory. Another version of my Rochdale revival slogan that I mentioned. I know that the council doesn't have to do it. It's not their fault, but they did own the ground before, and they could own it again, albeit briefly, and it will be bought back from them, hopefully without interest, without profit, but it will be bought back from them, and nothing will have been lost. And they have reserves that they could use for that purpose. And for those who say, well, you know, it's a commercial enterprise and so on, it's the town's club. And if it goes bust, the club and the town are perhaps irretrievably weakened. And so I'm hoping, I don't know if there are any council officials in the room, that the council will do that, and it will be one of my major priorities if I'm elected on Thursday as the Member of Parliament. Who am I? Someone said to me outside, you're a Scotsman. Well, so was Alex Ferguson. Pep Guardiola is not from Manchester. It's perfectly normal to hire people of note from outside. You can look on me as I come to the end of my career like Ronaldo offering to play for Rochdale for a 5-year contract for no money from you at all. That's what I'm offering. I'm a well-known person. That's why 36 television companies will be at the count on Thursday night. There wouldn't have been 3 or even 1 if I wasn't standing in this election. Al Jazeera are coming all the way from Qatar to film the count. We've put Rochdale on the map, and not in a bad way, for a change. Rochdale has been the victim of so many dark clouds, many of them self-inflicted, but not all of them. So many dark clouds that our attitude is the only way is up. We, by attracting attention and investment and business to this town, can only lift it, can only revive it. And we have a saying in Glasgow that it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. If the wheel wasn't squeaking, why would you oil it? And we intend to make a lot more noise than a squeak from here on Thursday and in the days that follow. By which I mean, if we win this seat, the 2 main parties will be running after the people of Rochdale until the general election to try and get it back. And the only way to get it back is to throw good things at the town, to say yes to things they were saying no to before. If you think about it, that's a matter of simple logic. The 2 main parties will be competing for government in just about 200 days from now. In fact, not cannot be more than 200 days. And they'll all be on their toes trying to get the seat back. So there's no loss for you at all in lending me your vote just once to send the message to the national government, the national political parties, that you're not happy with how things are. And how could you be happy? What kind of people would you be if you were happy at the way things have gone in Rochdale? It's been all downhill for Rochdale for quite a long time. But we have a two-pronged plan to ensure the revival in Rochdale. If we win on Thursday, in fact, whether we win on Thursday or not, we intend, sorry if there are any councillors or council officials in the room, we intend to change this town council because we believe that many of the problems here in Rochdale are entirely associated with its misgovernance from here. I mean no disrespect to the council officials, I'm talking about the politicians. The politicians that run Rochdale Council are substandard. I'm not going to go further than that, but they're substandard and they need replacing. And we have the young men and women that are required to replace them. And we will be standing to win power in the Rochdale Council after Thursday. It's only 12 weeks from our by-election to the council elections. Of course, not every seat is up for re-election, only 1/3 of them. They didn't fancy, they used to have an all-in, all-out election, but they decided they didn't fancy that any longer, too risky. Well, that means it will take us maybe 2 elections to be the majority group here in Rochdale Council, but we will do it and we'll make a big start on it 12 weeks from Thursday by replacing the worst of the rotten apples. And they're rotten. And everybody knows it from all the different communities. They know that in this building, in the town hall, is where the head of the snake lies. And we intend to make big changes. And so people ask me, will you have a rest after the election? The answer is no, for 2 reasons. One, because the council elections come quickly afterwards. And 2, because the general election will come quickly afterwards. Now, when I said I would like you to lend me your vote, you can go back, if you must, at the general election, if you're a real Tory or a real Labour or a real Liberal supporter, if any of those still exist. You can, of course, go back to them if you must, but I'll be running. I'll be standing in the general election. If I win the by-election, I'll be standing again 200 days later to defend this seat. And I hope, of course, that people will give me their vote to finish the job. But I'll start the job. And the very election on Thursday will kickstart a movement. If Donald Trump was here, he'd call it Make Rochdale Great Again. What's wrong with that, by the way? I've never understood why people laugh at that slogan. Let's make Rochdale great again. We can do it. It was great once, it ain't great now. Let's make it great again. Thanks for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions at all from the audience. Thank you, Chair.
Over to the audience. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm a local lad. I left to make my fortune down near Westminster, working with the politicians, and then did 5 years in stand-up comedy afterwards.
Excellent.
But we'll show that another time. 400 yards away from here is buried the greatest parliamentary orator of the 19th century, John Bright, who was a son of this town. He said a lot of things. I like a lot of the things, and I even watched his Senate hearing last night again, just those 20 minutes which I relived. And I've been fortunate to spend the afternoon with some of your activists, although I'm not committed with the activists, smashing law. One question I have. turn to Rochdale. Rochdale has a declared housing crisis. There are very limited scope for things that you could do as an MP, but you do have influence and you could be a conduit. There are 22,000 people chasing 10,000 properties and a 5-year waiting list in Rochdale. RBH, which runs the former council housing in Rochdale, has been doing so for 12 years. We had the great AAB thing, what are called the Seven Sisters near here, 7 tower blocks. I live in one of them. The idea was to clear people out, offer us each £8,000 compensation. There are now nearly 500 empty flats there. Nothing's being done because we're waiting to find out at the meeting on Thursday night, same day as the election, whether or not Legal in General are going to take control of all 7 blocks free of charge and spend £90 million on them. But it is a chronic condition in Rochdale, is housing. There are only limited things that the council can do, although Mr Gove gave them permission to open the housing revenue account. 37% of households in Rochdale have access to the cost of living crisis fund, which would suggest maybe 37% of households don't pay full council tax. Limited stuff there. Whatever you can do will be greatly appreciated. And one last question, I won't put you on the spot, but if you weren't successful, would you consider standing here in the general election?
Yes, is the answer to the last part. My attitude to housing is this. I was born in a slum. I mean a real slum, the kind that thankfully is difficult to find now. I shared an outside toilet with 5 other families. I recall it. We moved to a brand new council house when I was 5 years old. I can still smell the paint and the concrete. I can still remember playing in the building site. I lived in a council house all of my life until I left home in my late teens. And I support council housing. I'm not a great fan of these arm's length management organizations, the semi-privatization, which takes the form of housing associations, which are not in fact associations, they are in fact private commercial companies. And some of them do a good job. Although I went to one of the Borough-Wide's properties just the other day where you'll know very well, better than me, a little boy died of black mold in one of the great housing scandals of recent years. His parents had repeatedly told the officials that this mold was making them sick. They were given the age-old false advice: keep your windows open, ventilate the house more, as if it was their fault, and the child died. Now, I'm not blaming anybody in particular for that. I wasn't here. But I'll tell you why I prefer council housing over these housing associations. Because you get to elect your landlord, and you can unelect your landlord. And as Dr. Johnson said, the knowledge that one is to be hanged in the morning concentrates the mind wonderfully. When the landlord knows that you have the ability to hang him at the next election, he has to look a bit more lively. He can't afford to have thousands of people angry with his or her housing. And I and the Workers' Party favour council housing, and we favour a mass building programme, a mass house building programme. I'm talking about millions of houses. Now we come to the point you raised, the monstrosity of thousands of people waiting on a house and hundreds of flats lying empty. I don't know why they took the decisions that they did over the Seven Sisters, but I meet lots of people, and I infer that you are one of them, and you're living there, who say these flats are perfectly fine and people should be moved into them. And that requires, of course, the Legal and General decision on Thursday to go the right way. But if it doesn't go the right way, we have to find another solution. Knocking houses down when thousands of people are needing the houses is simple nonsense. And some of these people are homeless. Some of these people that are waiting for a house don't have even, you might not believe this, we found people living in tents in Rochdale yesterday. In tents. in 2024, as my colleague can testify. Now, we're 20 minutes from Manchester, one of the great metropolises of the world, one of the most happening cities in the world. We went to see the man that now owns the Exchange shopping centre. I'll come to that in a minute. And he said to me this, it's stayed with me throughout this whole campaign. 20 minutes from Manchester, how can you not make that work? Rochdale should be a prosperous place, and yet it suffers child poverty, low wages, unemployment, a parlous public realm, a housing shortage. The public realm is pitted like an RAF bombing raid had just hit it. There's potholes, including here outside Riverside. We parked the car and got out the car into a pothole. There's potholes you could lie down and sleep in Rochdale. There's all kinds of problems. This is why I say the council is the head of the snake. I infer that you have some sympathy for them in that in these Tory times they are short of money. But they haven't exactly been fighting for it very hard. And Andy Burnham is the Labour mayor of Greater Manchester. And I haven't heard anything. I don't mean to speak ill of the dead. Tony Lloyd was a friend of mine for many years. But if I'd been the MP, do you think they'd have gotten away with taking away the maternity, taking away the A&E? If they did, the entire country would know about it, because they would have had to lift me out on the bulldozer. I would have built a huge campaign here to save those services, but nobody campaigned. The public did, the mothers did, but the politicians didn't. There was no real fight to save the things that Rochdale has lost. So I'll be arguing for a labour-intensive, British capital-intensive house building drive throughout the whole country. I don't need to explain to you, you know it. If you build hundreds of thousands of houses, you're putting hundreds of thousands of people to work. Bricklaying work, joinery work, glazier work, electricians work, plumbing work. It's a job creation scheme to produce things that people actually need. And that's what our economy so badly lacks in this sphere and in so many others. I always ask people to do this, so let me do it now. We're in a room. Somebody made everything in this room. Somebody made everything in this building. Somebody made everything that you see outside. Problem is, very little of it was made by us, by our people. Now, I supported Brexit. Why? Because I wanted the opportunity of an independent Britain, free from the European Union's proscriptive rules, to support our national industries with public money as an engine to grow the economy. Now, the Tories have made a complete bollocks of Brexit, but that doesn't invalidate Brexit itself. We've got a steel industry where Tata, which by the way has a turnover larger than Pakistan's GDP, I learned today, we gave £500 million to the Indian steelmaker, Tata, who took the £500 million and then shut the steel works in Port Talbot. This, under Brexit, is ludicrous. The British government could have said to Tata, no, sorry, you're not leaving. You're staying, and if you don't stay, we'll take over the mill and you'll get no compensation. And you'll have to give us that money back because we're now free. We can make our own rules. We're not bound by European Union rules. I digress, but it's part of our approach to the economy, which is very different to the mainstream parties, whose point of view is frankly indistinguishable. I'm the author of the phrase that they're both two cheeks of the same arse. And that is exactly what they are on the economy and on so many other things. So it's a long answer to your question, but you'll find in me a friend of public housing if I'm elected here as the MP on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next question? Sir.
George, I asked you this question of a friend, and I'm putting this forward. I mean, we've been over, we've hit that iPlayer to the max. We're probably going to be the next Netflix. We're going to probably have a hit here. We're on it every week. We've got a policing issue. We want to be united together. Yeah. We've been through all the crosswire. I was actually in Kilmarnock just a week ago in your area and Brave Arts and all that. And I'm proud to come back. When people talk to me about Rochdale, I was born in Rochdale. And I'm proud to come back to Rochdale because Rochdale is the place where I was born and it's safe. It was a community that I grew up with. But we've still got a policing issue. We've got a policing impact that we need to show up on the front. And we can't stop this because it's getting out of hand. You know, kids are getting into things what we don't want. The generation moved and we've done this and Shumi will tell you they've activated this, you know, by going out and seeking, you know, the individuals, what are they doing, you know, stopping all the drugs and all that type of stuff. We've gone through all that. But we need something forefront now. We need to stop this. You know, we need the policing to be stronger. We used to have a magistrate court in here. We don't have a magistrate court. We used to have a lock-up here, a lock-up in Berwick. Forget that. And I'm saying this as a thing, my mother passed away just 5 years ago. God bless her. Which way would my ambulance go? Oldham or Fairfield? You know, it's easy to get to the next. That's what we've expanded in. You know, if you're having a heart attack, you might as well go to next because that's where you're going to find, you know what I mean, more help than you'll find in any of these two hospitals.
You should get a defibrillator.
Yeah, you know, the person who actually put their money and the investment and they've grown up and they're all pensioners. They've invested lives in putting the money into this town, but yet we're making them catch a 409 bus to get to 7 o'clock to go and see visiting hours. That's sad. That's sad affairs. You know, we're not in that day and age. You know, we're going to get to that age where we're not going to be able to drive. We're going to have to catch a taxi, but we don't know which way to go, left or right. You know, which way to the ambulance. The ambulance are actually sat there. They're actually on the thing. I was watching this. The ambulance deciding which way do they want to take the patient. You get to Oldham and they say, "Why have you come here?" All right, because the ambulance brought me. And it's scary time that we're going through. We're not just going through crime. We're all even going to the medical section. Nobody wants to support us. You know. So I'm asking you as a friend. You know, and I've had full trust and full faith, and I've never let somebody say nothing bad about Rochdale. You know, we've had a beautiful town, we've had a beautiful growing, but everything that we've had, we've lost it. You know, how can we bring that back in?
Well, you sound angry, polite but angry, and you're absolutely right to be angry. There's a magistrate in the room, that I know, but he hadn't actually briefed me that not only can you not be born in Rochdale, not only can you not die in Rochdale, you can't even be locked up in a cell in Rochdale. That I did not know. And I'm not sure I'll be fighting for more prison cells, but you're absolutely right to make that point, that set of points. And I can tell you from personal experience. We visited a care home last week or the week before, and just before we arrived, an old lady had taken a turn, and the ambulance took 45 minutes to arrive, and presumably 45 minutes to get back to the hospital. But which hospital? Well, that would depend on the ambulance driver ringing round to see where in the surrounding towns can they take that lady. A delay which might well, I don't know what happened to her, God forbid, she may have passed. And not only that, let's say she survived and hope that she did. Where are our people going to visit her? They don't know where she is. They're from Rochdale, their mother's from Rochdale. She was picked up in an ambulance in Rochdale, but where did they take her? No one knows until you phone up the hospital and find out where your old mother, your old grandmother is. This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous situation. Why can't we have an A&E? We've got a beautiful, big infirmary there. I was thinking of filming it today and running the specials track, Ghost Town. I knew the man who was the head of the ophthalmology department there, Mr. Qureshi, his name was. Mr. Qureshi was a world-class authority in ophthalmology. People used to come from around the world to see his department. I don't know where he is now. He's certainly not in Rochdale Infirmary because they closed it. So what is in there? I mean, are they rattling around inside it or what? If there's no A&E, there's no maternity, there's no ophthalmology, what actually is there there? Did we waste all that money on the infirmary? It's intolerable. So if I'm here for 5 years, my number one priority over that 5 years will be to get that hospital properly open and up and running again. But in the other points that you made, I just add this caveat. I agree with everything you said, but I add this. We do need better policing. We do need more policing. We need more faster, intelligent, responsive policing. I make that point because for all the press talk that there's been, the only victim of crime in this election is me. I've lost very expensive banners, and now up to 4 have been stolen, ripped down. Garden posts ripped down. The first banner that was ripped down, the police handled it very well and very quickly. And thanks to my friends in Sahara Restaurants, top-class CCTV, and the criminal's idiocy, he appeared face on the CCTV while he was doing it. And parked his car on double yellow lines where you could clearly see his registration plate. So you didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to pick him up. But they did pick him up, and fast. But nothing has happened about these other crimes. Nothing at all. We've reported them, but nobody's even called to take a statement. Never mind catch the culprits. So we do need better policing. But you know, the devil finds work for idle hands. Our young people have got idle hands because there's nothing for them to do. Why is there no youth services in Rochdale? I mean, none. You know, when I was born, there was nothing called youth services. Then for a brief period, we had youth services coming out of our ears. Community centres, municipal leisure centres, all owned by the state or the local state, all free. Everybody could use them and everybody did. And now we're back to what it was like when I was born. There are no free public leisure and recreation services for our young people. I go to boxing clubs. I was a boxer when I was young, so don't try anything.
Go ahead, sorry.
The situation is, you can only go to these clubs, football, boxing, if either you've got the money or, as is the case in Rochdale, many of them friends of mine, you've got private benefactors running fundraising to keep these places open. I went to one in Whitworth this afternoon. They're shutting down swimming pool, the leisure centre there. They're shutting it down for the sake of £25,000 because they don't have money. Now, that's in quite a plush part of town. It probably won't have a knock-on effect of increased crime, antisocial behaviour and so on. But there are many other parts of the town where if there's no youth services, the kids are on the street. And if they're on the street, people will find bad things for them to do. And they'll be drawn down a path that ends up, I always say this, a stitch in time saves 9. You've all heard it.
Yeah.
If you don't pay for the stitch, you'll pay 9 times more down the line because you didn't stitch. By which I mean a young person abandoned to their own devices and to the advices to the vices of others will end up costing you a lot more than 9 because they'll get into trouble, they'll commit crimes, they'll go into young offenders, they'll go into prisons, and they'll cause havoc throughout their lives. And the cost of that might have been avoided if you'd paid for that initial stitch that kept them on the right track, gave them the right values. Like boxing, I went to boxing because I was quite aggressive. And my father, God rest him, said, if you're going to be aggressive, here's boxing gloves, get in the ring. That way you'll realize that when you're aggressive, the other fella can be aggressive back and you might get a sore face. Number two, you have to stay within the rules. You can't punch when the bell's already rung. You cannot punch in the kidney. You cannot rabbit punch, all that. You learn that there are rules in life. And thirdly, if you're taking drugs or drinking alcohol, it will quickly be found out in the ring. It will be visible to the trainer from the first time. The trainer knows that you're no longer living a healthy life. That's why I'm so in favour of sport and sporting facilities, but not just them, cultural facilities, so that people can learn to play musical instruments. I played the double bass because I got free music lessons at school. Music lessons are virtually a thing of the past in school now. And I ended up playing in the National Orchestra. I should have took up the electric bass. I see my comrades looking at me to say, you never told us that before, you could have been playing at benefits. But my point is, if you abandon kids, don't expect anything other than crime and antisocial behaviour to be the result. I'm not making light of the need for proper policing. I'm tough on crime. I ain't no liberal. Trust me. I'm not one of these namby-pamby liberal socialists that think all criminals are victims. I don't think like that. I think the rest of us have got to be protected from criminals. And working class people are the most likely to be the victims of crime. But at the same time, you can't just have the approach of more punishment, more cops, more at that end. You have to deal with what the economists call the supply side. And the supply side of this equation is the absolute dearth in Rochdale and many other places of decent things for young people to be doing and decent habits to be learning.
Thank you very much. Is there another question? Any more for any more? Go ahead.
What do you think about Wes Streeting's suggesting in the Telegraph that people shouldn't bother to vote?
Well, if you don't vote, you are voting. Yeah, you're effectively helping the person who does win. And I think it's churlish. I mean, the reason he's the Labour, right? Supposedly. The reason that there's no Labour candidate here is their own fault. I mean, they picked him and put him in, and he's on the ballot paper. And they intended to run the shtick that I would come here and cause division, but actually it was Labour that caused the biggest division there's been in politics in this town for half a century. It was their candidate that said on tape, though it's funny that what kind of party is it where they're all taping each other and then releasing the tapes when it's already too late to pull the guy out. Makes you wonder. To use his words, his statement was stupid, ignorant, incendiary, and false. Makes you wonder why anyone should have voted for him. If he's that stupid, that ignorant, that incendiary, that false, I'm not sure why anyone would want to vote for him. But anyway, he's their problem. So they have pulled him out, though he's still on the ballot paper. I think he had an uphill fight ahead of him anyway, for a variety of reasons. I mean, that guy outside, when he asked me if I was Scottish, he was implying I was a foreigner, but actually the Labour candidate was just as foreign as me, arguably more foreign than me, if you get my drift. I'm white British, he isn't. I came from another place, so did he. He'd never set foot in Rochdale. I've been coming to Rochdale for 25 years. 2 of my sons live 20 minutes from here. Our daughter was born in Rochdale in Manchester. I shouldn't say this, people tell me to stop saying it, but I'm a Manchester United supporter, and so I suffer at Old Trafford every 2 weeks. So I'm in this area all the time, and for decades. I first spoke here 25 years ago. It would probably have been about the Iraq War or the Afghan War or 9/11, that kind of thing. And I've been speaking here regularly ever since, so I'm actually not a foreigner, not as foreign as the Labour candidate was anyway. But I'm not local, sure, that's for sure. But Fergie wasn't local to Old Trafford, and he did pretty well.
So you
So there's a City fan in the crowd.
Does that mean we're all wearing kilts from now onwards?
No, but I will introduce you to the joys of vegetarian haggis.
Any more for any more before we move to closing remarks? Right, George, over to you then.
Well, thanks for coming. It's been short, but I hope sweet. According to the bookies, I'm a red-hot odds-on favourite, but we, like Imran Khan, we play to the last ball, so we'll be bothering you for your vote right up until the last hour, the last minute of the last hour on Thursday. And I hope you give me the chance to serve you as the Member of Parliament. John Bright was a great parliamentary orator, no doubt, although luckily for him there's no YouTube memory of it.
Fortunately, the council neglected its grave. I found it between a used condom and a syringe.
Ooh.
And a now fly tip inside,
Shame on
400
them.
yards away.
Shame on them.
Oh my God.
But I was a parliamentary orator of note. I won Parliamentarian of the Year, and Parliamentary Speech of the Year, and many other awards like that. I'd like to speak for you. And I'll be the MP for all of you, whether you vote for me or not. And I'll give as much attention to the problems of those who didn't vote for me as I will to those who did. But I hope that I've done enough to persuade you to give me 200 days at least. Even Ronaldo's worth a 200-day contract. Thanks very much for coming.